Whether you are on an adventure or at the downtown cafe, your answers are no more than a sniff away. Dog Training 360's purpose is simple: to teach you why dogs do what they do, as well as the action steps you need to take to have better communication, connection, consistency, and conceivability with your dog. As we wrap up our last adventure podcast and heading into a new topic, we're going to talk about just the season changes and things that you should be prepared for, and some of the questions that I've been getting on social media about keeping your dog warm, and also, just some health concerns that you have to think about, and maybe put away some of the, the myths that everybody thinks of when we think about the weather. So two things that come to mind is I saw a post and it was, if we're cold, they're cold. And then the other one is, I've just built a nice, shelter for my dog, and they want nothing to do with it, and they don't want to go in there. And, to the point that the dog doesn't want to go in there or even to drink water. And so I would like to, hit that first one is, if we're cold, they're cold. And if that's the case, then my dogs would be cold in the middle of summer because I can be cold at 80 degrees. And I'm pretty sure that they're not cold at that time.
Yeah.
So it's not really true to if we're cold that they're cold, because they're not human beings. Mm-hmm. And yes, they're mammals, but they're not conditioned like, we've been domesticated, if you will, mm-hmm. into we can put clothes on, we have heaters in our house, mm-hmm. and yep, the dogs have been somewhat conditioned to it too. Mm-hmm. But, if you have a dog that lives in the house all the time and you send them out and say good luck, then obviously their thermostats are not going to be ready for it. But I had a client yesterday ask about the weather, mm-hmm. and my comment was, well, he hangs outside and he really likes to hang outside for hours, mm-hmm. and he's fine because his thermostat adjusts to what the weather is. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it messes him up to bring him back into the heat, mm-hmm. and that's,
the in and out quick mm-hmm. changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find with my dogs personally, this is the perfect temperature of year for mm-hmm, them, mm-hmm. like between 60 and 35 degrees, I think, is their favorite. Mm-hmm. That if I let them outside, they will stay outside the whole day.
Yeah.
In fact, Louis is outside now.
I noticed he's like nowhere
He's
around.
Been outside since 8 o'clock this morning.
Yeah.
I had to bring the other dogs in because we had a freak vomit incident, and it's just easier to be clean,
Yes.
So he's just out there by himself. But all my dogs have been out all morning today, and it's one of the colder days that we had this year.
Yep.
They love to go in the car. They love to go for
mm-hmm.
walks
mm-hmm.
when it starts getting below 70.
Yeah.
That's when they're like, it's our time to be outside.
Yep.
They like outside in the summer, but they get really hot. Yeah. I notice.
Yeah.
And just the way my yard is, I don't have a way to cool them off.
Right.
They can find the cool, dig their little holes and crawl down in, where it's moist and stuff like that. But really the starting in the fall, mm-hmm. like they'll be outside in the fall all winter, in the snow.
Yeah.
When it's below 0, I'm more careful with them, but they love it
for sure
outside.
For sure. Yeah. And I think the thing that we forget about is, this is the easiest time for them to regulate their thermostat, mm-hmm. because
they could
really
go
is
sit in the sun, go sit on a lawn, go sit in the shade.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And I mean, even today, mine are usually asking around this time to come in for their afternoon nap.
Mm-hmm.
Like
yes. Me and mine too.
Both of them are, they were just like, okay, see, we're just going to, nobody was at the door. They just kind of, they followed me up to the door and then they turned right around and, nobody was like, hey, we got to get in and take a nap. They're really like just sprawled out in the sun, mm-hmm. and just really, it's a great time of year to do things, with the dogs. I think that we forget that even in below freezing, if our dogs are conditioned to it,
oh sure,
they're completely fine. And so, you know, if we're cold, they're cold. It's not a thing. It's not a thing at all. Because guess what? If we actually spent the time outside, which we do have times that we're out in it, and then we're just in a vest because our body's starting to, you know, get conditioned to the colder weather. And so it just doesn't make sense to make that statement. And then the other thing with shelter outside is if they need it, they will use it. And the thing that I have found is my dogs will head into the garage in the summertime where they can get in more so than they ever will in the wintertime.
Even when it's snowing and raining.
Yep.
Like we had our first snow here yesterday in Utah, and the dogs wanted to go outside, and my husband was like, you won't like it, it's snowing. And I'm like, they'll be fine. Open the door. They were out all day, out playing in the snow.
Mine too.
You know,
totally having a great time. Yeah, it just if they need the shelter, they will use it because they're not dumb,
right?
And they know that okay, now it's too cold and I can't figure it out. And so some of the advice that I gave when I had this question was just make sure it's accessible to them. But if you look at the dogs that are running the Iditarod and they're in, you know, the sled dog races and all of that, those dogs are outside because they need to be conditioned to being outside and working in it and having their thermostat correct for them, or you'll kill them. But all of them have shelter. And they choose to sleep outside their shelter. Sometimes they're sleeping on top of their shelter. Sometimes they're just at the side to block the wind. And other times they just lay there and let the wind blow the snow over top of them, and it becomes a great little warm, little snug thing, you know, for them in the snow. So we have to remember that our dogs are not dumb. No. They're not dumb. And, you know, yes, you should have shelter for them if they're outside dogs, for sure. But it shouldn't be a concern that they're not using it because they will if they have to.
And I mean, people check on their dog too.
For
a
sure.
lot of people don't just, I will just let my dog out.
Right.
It'll be out all day.
You gotta peek
but
out.
a lot of people do like just check. How you doing? Everything okay?
Yep.
And if you're checking on them, then they're fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, there's some places in the world that it gets so cold and you don't take your dogs out. And we've been, you know, up in Montana when it's negative 40 and the cold is burning their pads because we don't have that here and there's no way to condition it. And so, you know, we find ways around that because we're not up there in negative 40 all
every
the time.
Day.
I'm not buying boots for them.
Right.
But we definitely are. We stick on the grass. We stick on the sidewalks where it's not quite as, you know, bad. We make sure that in those situations that we go out earlier and we don't go out again. And they just hunker down. You know, I tell people all the time, I just hibernate the dogs. I mean, they're all now, you know, my dogs are all heading into bed between 8:30 and 9 o'clock right now. And nobody's getting up until 7-ish. And so, I mean, you can hibernate them to help them be in during the coldest times. So as you start kind of prepping, Shannon, what some advice if somebody's going to go out and start snowshoeing and start some new winter, you know, adventures right now while we're in this kind of transition from fall to winter, what kind of things would you advise people to do?
Go out every day at the time period when you think you're going to be snowshoeing. Yeah. So if you're going to think you're going to be snowshoeing in the middle of the day, go out in the middle of the day. If you think you're going to be doing it at night after work, because you want to condition to the temperature of the time when you're doing the activity as the temperature changes. Yep. So you don't want to go out every day for your conditioning at the hottest time of the day and then go snowshoeing at night.
Right.
Right. Yep. So, and do it in all conditions.
Yes.
Don't stay in if it's raining. Go out every day,
Yeah.
no matter what the weather is.
Yep. Yep.
And then you have to think about the actual condition of the body. Are you going to be going uphill? Go for your walk places that are uphill.
Right.
So that you don't get too physically drained
Yeah.
when you go out on
Yeah.
your thing. Because you have to think about that too. Conditioning for exercise as well as conditioning for weather.
Yeah. Yep. I think the other thing too that people don't realize is, I had one person say, oh, we don't, even for the horses, we don't need to have as many waters out for them because they're drinking less in the winter. And actually they're drinking more in the winter than they are in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think people think of it that way. They think it's cold and we're not going to be drinking cold things.
Right. Well, and I notice my dogs, I'm having to feed them more because they're outside and they're using their energy to stay warm.
Yep.
And so I have to increase their food because I'm like, ooh, you're getting too skinny from using your heater to heat you outside.
Right.
So you have to pay attention
Yep.
to those kind of things.
Yep, exactly. And I mean, and that's another key thing is their food intake based on their burning calories to stay warm,
mm-hmm.
just like we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to make sure that their calories are, in check for what you're doing, the amount of time that they're spending outside. And you don't just increase it because it's winter.
No.
I mean, if they're staying inside,
then it doesn't matter
then
because
it
they're
doesn't
warm.
matter.
Yeah.
But if, like mine, they'll spend a fair amount of time outside. I mean, we're outside. We're adventurous.
At least 5 hours a day.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
That's like the minimum amount of time outside.
Yeah.
It's 5 hours.
So, I mean, we're definitely, eating is definitely, you need to be aware of it and make sure that they are getting the calories, but we don't want to make them fat.
Mm-mm.
So, because that's not good for them either. And that just makes it harder for them to regulate their temperature. So as we shift into, and then the seasons are changing and you're getting out, maybe this is your time of year and you get out more this time of year, you need to condition them. You
Mm-hmm.
need to help your dog be ready for it and not just all of a sudden you start going and they're used to sitting in the heated house. And, I see more and more people out as we're out and about, but not, people, I've seen some people already with their coats on to their dogs.
Not to coats yet.
And, you're just not doing your dogs a favor by doing that because
it's the same as you. Like if you were going to go on a big, huge walk, you wouldn't wear all your like parka and snow pants and whatever kind of stuff too.
Yep.
It's the same for the dog.
Yeah.
Like if they're sitting in the shade outside, then maybe.
Yeah.
I don't ever do sweater until it's like below zero.
Yep.
Because they're out there, they're running around,
Yeah.
they're covered in hair.
Yeah.
They get winter hair that
They do.
insulates them
It's
better.
way different. Yeah.
So if you're going to go for a walk, I never put my dog's coat on if we're doing a physical activity.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't either. And, we have a client that has a Xolo or a Mexican airless and there's times that I feel like, I should probably put her jacket on. But most of the time she's way over toasty and I end up taking it off once we get to the top of the hill that we're all just huffing and puffing and hot.
Yes.
And I end up taking it off because she's not cold, and so, even those that don't have the hair, their body changes and she definitely gets darker. She gets her little winter fuzz going. And that's what that's what dogs do. They're pretty
adaptable
fabulous that way. And so again, it's more conditioning for the elements and what activities you're going to do and the adventures you're going to go on versus, if you're going to be out in wind that's blowing 30 miles an hour in the cold, you might need to think about that. The wind is much more harsh than just snow and even rain at that point, and so, I tell people all the time, the wind is what you need to be careful with and what's going to make it more difficult for them to be warm than just being outside when the weather is just the weather. So depending upon where you're at, in the world with your dogs, you just need to help them be conditioned to it. And, not get caught up into, if we're cold, then they're cold. I'm putting my vest on, so I must put a vest on the dog. I'm freezing to death, so they must be, just icicles, because it's not true. That's just not how it is. So, I think as we talk about going on adventures and being out and about, it definitely, you have to think about the weather, and you have to condition your dog for it as well.